Like, what is your educational background in this field?
Oh, yeah, where to start? I started as a teacher for elementary, and from there on, I did child coaching, youth coaching, so teen coaching, and then I did so many training for adults and other professionals. So I wanted to complete a circle so I can look at people from and go to the core of their problem. So from the social, the emotional, the physical, the cognitive, and the spiritual perspective.
Mhm.
So I think it's really important, especially when you are educating your child or your student, that you don't look from just one or two perspectives. So I had this methodology in mind, and I followed that course until I had all the experience and the scientific training and also the non-scientific training to be able to scan people and help them.
Do you find that, like, I noticed that, like you just said, you deal with, children, youth, adults. Um, do you do many like families?
Yeah, I started, like I said, with child coaching, but I noticed very early on that when I had the conversations, the transfer with the parents, um, that had a much more long-term result for the child. So in that way, when you work with a child, it is best to connect with the whole family and support them. Nowadays, I don't work with the children in that way. Now I empower the parents to help their children.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That is perfect. Um, so before we started recording, we talked a little bit about what sensitivities look like. Would you give us a couple of examples of that?
Yeah, well, high sensitivity, so having a highly sensitive child, means that your child has the scientific term is sensory processing sensitivity. So they're an HSP, or you could say that means highly sensitive person, or you could say an HSC, highly sensitive child. And 1 out of 5 is highly sensitive, and they are born in that way. So it's an innate trait. It's nothing that you did. It's not any default or anything in your in the upbringing of your child. Not at all. And it's not a disorder and not a disability. So it's just a character trait. And highly sensitive children eat and think and communicate and learn and play in a different way than other children do. So that's why it's important also in homeschooling that you know how to guide them, how to support them.
I agree. I agree. I know it was very difficult for my son when he was younger and going through school. It was very well, and I guess I'm probably talking about maybe 7 years ago, when he was maybe about 7 or 8 years old, and just like the teachers aren't trained in any of this stuff. They
Yeah,
don't. I mean, there's so many things that they need to know.
I totally get it. I
Yeah.
understand. I think it was 22 years ago. I followed a lecture, and that was about new age children. And I knew at the time that I was going to teach about the subject of sensitivity in education, and that's exactly where it all started. I went to the Teachers Academy and I said, "Oh, you need to know." But I said, "No, no, you're still a student at the Teacher Academy yourself, so you're not even certified." So I couldn't. But if teachers know that they can look at the acronym of DOES, so depth of processing overstimulation, emotional intensity and empathy, and sensitivity to the subtle, they can really support their student in that way. And of course, the parents who are homeschooling.
And excuse me, and I found a lot of the schools in Ontario have a very, very narrow view of the parent. So, you know, it's taken years for me to find somebody to listen. It took years for me to find somebody to listen just about his sensitivities, let alone everything else going on. So, and also, the school that my son went to for elementary, that school would not listen to me, but would not allow me to have an outside professional come in to talk to them.
Oh, that's difficult. Yeah.
Very difficult. It was, you know, and I kept saying, like, I don't understand. I have somebody that can come in and train you. It's not going to cost you anything. It's just going to give you a better understanding of not only my son, but other kids in the classroom.
Yeah. What is good for a highly sensitive child is good for all the children. So
that's what I kept saying, you know, and the kids that need to, you know, like specific input into their bodies for being able to learn and pay attention. You know, I now have one teacher that I have noticed, and I really like her. She was Garrick's teacher when they were very young, and she's a good teacher. She has, you know, even though we had a very good relationship, and she took a lot of the information that I had and incorporated it. Even this year, she still accepted a little bit of information I had about one of the students and how I thought it wasn't behavioral, it was more of a sensory issue for this child. And the fact that I could speak like that to her was amazing. And she wasn't going to be insulted about it, but also that she took the information, and now I walk by their classroom and, you know, they are doing movement every morning.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and necessary. Yeah.
Absolutely. And plus it gives it, like, you can't expect somebody who is in grade, you know, in any grade, I don't care what grade it is, but any grade, to sit in a chair.
Yeah.
For the whole day.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It really is. I hate sitting in a chair for the whole day. So I can't, and like, you know, these kids, like, they just want to be kids too.
Yeah, I can totally relate. Yeah. Especially when you have a certain learning style, learning strategy, and you need to move. Necessary, it's to activate the brain, or to reactivate sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes to calm it down.
Yeah,
like to give that input so that they you know, get it in through their whole bodies through movement.
Yeah, absolutely. The brain needs to know that there's action. So in that way, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, you know, some of the schools have really embraced that, and how some of the schools they're just so strict.
Yeah. Well, it is. I totally understand the point of view of the teachers. They have so many things on their mind, especially also this year, and it's a lot. And what the your district or the government has already planned out to what should be accomplished that year is tough. So I totally understand the perspective of the teacher. I also get that as a parent, you can sometimes feel overwhelmed in that educational jungle when you have the feeling that you are not seen, heard or understood, or your child in that way. And then you have the feeling, hey, I have to go to the teacher again. They must think, hey, there's that mother again or that father. And you don't even go. And then until it all boils up, and then you need to go. And so I get it. Being a mother myself, I get all perspectives. So yeah, I understand that it's a journey also for the parents. That's why I'm writing the book, How to Support Your Sensitive Child's Needs in Education, for the parents.
Wow. I wish I would have had something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wish I had that too.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been amazing. So, so I find that would be a major difference in the homeschool setting, is that, you could, your child could lie on the floor, your child could, bounce on a ball and read a book. Your child could, really do things in a different way. And also, I think too, it gives them a chance to explore.
Yeah. And stay eager to learn. Because sometimes in the educational system, there can be school trauma, for example. Doesn't always have to be, but 50% of the high sensitive children do have some issues in education. It doesn't always have to be big, but has an effect on them. And so homeschooling, which we are also doing at the moment, we did with our children. We had Dalton. I don't know if that's familiar.
No.
No, okay. That's a certain stream within education. And then we went to a Catholic school, and which was also public. And now we're homeschooling, and that's because of my mission, that I knew I had needed to go to Italy to spread awareness about high sensitivity. So one of the huge benefits was that especially my youngest son could be homeschooled here. Of course, not knowing the language, of course, in the beginning. So I, in that way, I understand that all the different types of education, and there are beautiful things in all different forms, but it needs to suit your child. It needs to fit their needs.
So how have you found the homeschooling? Like, I'm sure the traveling is a lot easier. You could, so where were you before you went to Italy?
I'm from the Netherlands.
You're from the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So Italy was that for your work that you went there? Yes.
No, it was for my calling, a true calling, that I knew I had to go to Italy to spread awareness. And it was not an emigration like you would normally do to a sunny country with great food.
Yeah.
Not at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen it at that time, but I followed my calling. And to connect high sensitivity here within the culture, but also internationally, connecting people to this trait. So it was really strong. And then we changed our whole life in the Netherlands just for this higher cause.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So did you, how many children do you have?
I have 2 children. They're 16 and 19, 2 boys.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So did you homeschool both of them?
We are now, he is homeschooling himself, like unschooling already a bit. So we had all these stages. But of course, my eldest son now doesn't need to be homeschooled anymore. But with my youngest son, he has total freedom now, which was difficult in the beginning, because starting out as a teacher, you have a certain system in mind, a certain
Right.
pattern, and a certain belief. So it was a bigger journey for me than for my child, because having a strict method in with a certain type of books, and then exploring their own interests, and sometimes, well, many times, seeing that I was more frustrated than my child was, because I had that idea it should be is done in a certain way. And now he's totally following his own interest, and he's thriving in that way. So now he can stand up whenever he wants. He doesn't even have to sit down. He can follow the intrinsic motivation and stay eager and open to learn. But it takes a while. It takes a while when your child is out of education to adjust to homeschooling, and especially for the parents. So it is important, and I really advise you to let go of to really to not only let go, but to look at your own beliefs and your own experiences in education. So you cannot mirror them onto your child in that way. And I don't mean in a bad way, that like you did something wrong, but within every parent, there's a blind spot, and it can help to look at that, and then be totally ready to fail, because that's there's the gold in the failing.
Yes, and I I heard from another speaker. She had said, she said, you know what, um, for new parents that are coming into this, she said, give yourself a year.
At least.
Like, don't stress out in that first year. Just be like a discovery year. You know, don't worry about how much work they get done. Your goal should be just trying to figure out how this is going to work for your family and your child.
Yeah.
And
it also depends on the age of the child.
well, yeah, like I thought that was brilliant. I really did, because I thought that point of view would take so much pressure off of both the parent and the child. Because the child too, if you know, and to me, especially if they have been pulled out of school, would be just as confused as the parent is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it is not about all about learning new things when you're homeschooling. More often it's about unlearning the things that you have learned in a certain way. So and especially for the highly gifted children.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the fact that, you know, incorporating your professional strategies into the homeschooling setting. And, you know, do you find that a lot of homeschoolers use sensitivity activities in their homeschool setting?
Yeah, I do a masterclass, which is also called How to Support Your Sensitive Child's Needs in Education. And that is more parents visit my masterclass who have children in regular education, but also homeschool parents. And in there I go, I talk about the day before school, for example, and when in the morning, what you can do when you're on your way to school, and during the subjects, how your child learns and everything, also after school. And what I notice is that when you know how your child learns, how that mechanism within a highly sensitive child works, it is easier to stay in connection, so they can be open and stay open to learn.
And what, you know, I don't know if this is even a proper question, but are there certain types of sensitivities that would be at like more common than others. You know, like if a parent looked at their child, you know, like I said, with me and my son and I, it was a lot of research for me. I knew there was something going on. I knew that, you know, I knew the smelling, I knew the touching, I knew, like, he would even smell people's furniture when we went to their house.
Yeah,
right.
The sensorical
Oh yeah.
sensitivity.
Yeah. And I didn't stop him even in other people's homes, because it was, to me, he was like, okay, I recognize this. I feel safe here. I'm okay.
Yeah, safety is really important. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I found he was getting from that. Right. And he can definitely recognize when a smell changes.
Yeah, that's a talent.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like cleaning my house, I clean with nothing but vinegar and water.
I understand that. Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
And I usually do it when he's not here, because even the vinegar, excuse me, is you know, he's like, Mom, like, he went for a walk with my sister the other day, and I thought, oh, I'll get some cleaning done while he's gone. And there was still some vinegar in the cloth. I guess I hadn't rinsed it enough. And it was the first thing he smelled when he walked in the door.
Yeah.
What is the smell? What is that?
Yeah. So can you imagine what it's like when you're in a classroom, for example, and you need to sit there and you don't like the smell? So that's really disturbing while you are expected to learn. Yeah.
Yes. And you know, and in the classroom, you have all of those other children, all of their liquid detergents, all of their, you know, laundry sheets, the teacher's perfume, like what the cleaners use. Like, it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so is the audio. The audio is very overwhelming also.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably also in larger groups, and when you're in a car, for example, and you have the radio on, and it sometimes can be too loud, and then they become really tired or drained. So sometimes it's best to let them regulate the the car radio.
Yeah, and I think to understand too, like, could you talk just a little bit about the stress on the person who has the sensitivities? And like you said, like they'll kind of, like, you know, fall asleep. It's like their body is tired from dealing with all that stuff. Could you talk a little bit about that and what that does to their physical bodies when they have those sensitivities?
Yeah, of course. It's like I said, when you're thinking all the time, 24/7, you can get easily overwhelmed. So when you're overwhelmed and it gets too much, like you're having a short circuit in your brain, then you cannot handle anything. You don't want anyone touching you, or I will also really advise not to ask any questions, because the child usually knows best how to regulate themselves, or otherwise when you can go over that topic with them when they're not overwhelmed, to discuss what they can do. But usually highly sensitive children either withdraw within themselves or they can explode. And I totally understand when you're overwhelmed and you have a short circuit and you have a lot of information coming in, but sometimes your body just needs to shut down and then calm down. So, and especially when anxiety, yeah, I see you nodding. Yeah, is also present, then yeah, it can feel frightening for the child. And as a parent, you probably recognize some of the the symptoms up front. For example, when your child has dark circles under their eyes when they're really tired, or are pale. And the non-highly sensitive parent can have some trouble with that, but you just need to explain what you see as the highly sensitive parent within your child, so the other parent or the teacher can really help to support them.
And, you know, for my personal experience, I found that the withdrawal was scarier than the outburst.
Yeah.
Because my son would literally just collapse on the floor. And he would not respond. He would not react to anything that was going on around him. And it wasn't until within that time where he was so withdrawn was a lot of times that was in a trauma therapy that I had him do. But it wasn't until they introduced me to a psychologist within their company that could actually help me to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
And show me what to do. Like she would say, you know, just let him know that you're here. Let him know he's okay. You know, she said you can, you know, softly just kind of, you know, rub his hand just to let him know that physically it's okay. And then just let him come around. And that took so much stress off of me. Just to understand that one little piece of what he went through.
Yeah.
You know, give it time. Don't rush him. And it's hard for a parent not to get in there and try and fix things. You know, we want to fix everything we can for our child. And, you know, we don't want them to, you know, get hurt or like anything like that. So I think
especially when it's time-wise not comfortable, then when you need to go somewhere or you are somewhere, then that's where your parenting is tested. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, I always say that my son has taught me more than I would ever have known before. And I'm a lot more patient. I really am with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's really transferred into other areas of my life and not just my relationship with my son.
Yeah. Yeah. More probably also more compassionate in a different way than you already were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I can relate to the person whose child is freaking out in a store. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
And you know, like I find that, you know, in public it's very hard, but if the child is at home and the parent gets to, you know, take your master class, buy your book that's coming out, to learn how to help their child through these things, how to recognize what's happening, and then how to support their child.
Yeah.
And how to allow their child to self-regulate.
Yeah. And let their child know that they're already whole. They're enough. They're all okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree. And you know, I really think that, you know, the homeschooling that would happen with a child or a youth with sensitivities would be so totally different, but so supportive of the child.
Yeah, not every child is homeschooling doesn't fit every highly sensitive child or parent in that way, But there are many, many highly sensitive children and teens who are dreaming of the possibility to be homeschooled. They would give anything to just be homeschooled, not to go through a lot of things that are happening in education, like bullying, for example, fear of failure, the anxiety, the separation anxiety to go to school. Yeah.
Well, and you know, with this pandemic also, I know when we went back to, like, I started volunteering and working in this elementary school because my son was there. So I would be on site kind of just to say, you know what, like, this is what's happening, right? But also I loved it so much. And I've watched so many of these kids come in from kindergarten and, you know, go through, and then their younger siblings are coming in. And I just love these kids so much. I'm still there. He's in grade 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still working there, you know, and I find that, like, when we came back in September, we had 50% of our children come back.
Okay.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So the other 50% was either online in virtual learning or being homeschooled.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation started in March when everything shut down. Then all of a sudden, you know, it was 2 weeks, and then it was another 2 weeks, and then nobody knew what was going on. And then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, April's gone, and the parents are going, okay, what's happening with the school, right? Because it was very difficult for the boards of education to scramble and try and get everybody online, which is what they tried to do here, to kind of, you know, so they wouldn't lose that whole last 3 months of school.
Yeah.
So,
They had superpowers this year. They always have, but especially this year, it was really tough. Yeah.
it was
Really.
very tough. And the parent, like the school boards here, I must say, worked very hard. And so they did surveys with the parents. What would they like to see? They did that after everything started. Their first thing that they did was make sure that every student had something at home that they could use for the virtual learning, whether it was an iPad or, you know, a computer, a laptop, it didn't matter what it was. And if they did not have access to that, or if there were 2 or 3 kids in the same family that needed those things, those items, the board of education would, like, supply them with that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing they started to do was take the computers and iPads that were in the schools and start distributing them. And then they made sure that everybody had internet. Right? Because there's a lot of, you know, low income households in everywhere. Really.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they made sure that they had internet, and then they got them hooked up with their teachers, and they got them. So by the time the Board of Education got all of that figured out, the teachers were pretty much ready to come online. And yeah, and now even, so we came back the September 15th is when our school came back. Yeah. And since then, we have consistently been having children and parents decide on an alternate route for their education rather than in person.
Mm-hmm.
So every, you know, month, we're losing more children to that alternate, you know, source of education that they're doing. And a lot of it is homeschooling.
Yeah.
A lot of it is. And it's also most of, like, for the online learning, it's most of the students who do very well in school. So they would do very well on virtual online learning. Like, they would do their homework, they would do, you know, all of the projects and everything.
More consistent, yeah.
More consistent. right? So then you still have, all of like these children at school. And of course, they don't know what's going on. They have all that added stress. They have, the teachers have all that added stress. We had 5 cases at one point in the school.
Okay.
5 cases. And there's literally about 70 kids in the school.
Uh-huh.
So to have 5 cases, that's almost 10%.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a lot. And that was very scary to a lot of the students too.
I totally get that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so the pandemic has really opened up that homeschooling conversation.
Yeah. And I think parents now also see what teachers do and how much effort and how much energy it takes to teach children and stay in that energy of enthusiasm, especially. Yeah.
So how would you try and help a parent to incorporate the sensitivity needs into a homeschool setting? What would that look like?
Well, it depends, of course, on the background of the child, their educational background, what their circumstances were, and what the situation is at that moment. Of course, we're going to explore what their learning strategy is, what suits best. Observe their nonverbal behavior and their verbal behavior, and see what cognitive issues come up and how are they physically responding while learning at the time, and to see what their in the spiritual part, what is like what I spoke about earlier, what a child can do to clear the situation, to open up blind spots for themselves, so also for their child, to give their child space, not only in physically, but also in their mind. And yeah, it's a whole circle that I that I cover when I work with the parents. So, like I said, from the social and the emotional, the cognitive, the physical, and the spiritual part. And sometimes highly sensitive children are labeled as shy, can be, but doesn't always have to be. And many are misdiagnosed for ADD or ADHD or dyslexia, and that doesn't always have to be the case. And sometimes there are certain primary reflexes that aren't integrated yet. So this goes really deep. I look from all perspectives to help them help their child to learn. And we say homeschooling, but homeschoolers know that's not always at home. We try not to. We try to get out as much as possible. So there's a misconception about homeschooling. What we are, I say we, but what society is doing now, I totally understand you have to stay at home, but it's not what homeschooling parents normally do. They go out a lot and socialize a lot with others, even more than sometimes with the children who are at school. So there's not a one size fits all. You really have to look at the situation and the interest of the child also.
See, I think that's brilliant. I think what you're doing is absolutely necessary. I really do. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what verbal and nonverbal indications, what they may look like, so that a parent could actually maybe start to clue into the fact that there is an issue with their child, like because I think I think it's important for them to be able to just start to realize, okay, look, you know, there's something here. And then, you know, and then if they actually decide that their child has, or, you know, thinks they have some kind of sensitivity issue, then they could come to somebody like you. But it's got to start somewhere. So how would you describe like verbal and nonverbal indication?
Yeah. Yeah, you mean in the homeschool setting or in the public and private schools?
Well, yeah, I guess they'd be so different, eh? But how about, you know, at home?
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily then there is less anxiety than we normally would have in the school, because many of them already develop aches the day before. And so that's wonderful that they're in a safe environment. Highly sensitive children don't like to be observed. They really don't like that. Then they will perform 1 or 2 levels beneath their actual ability or capabilities. That's one thing.
Wow.
Yeah, really something to keep in mind. The nonverbal, yes. Well, how are they moving? How are they moving their hands, their feet while learning? Are they standing up a lot? After how many minutes do they need a break? Well, you can measure that when you work with a child. What is their best learning strategy, of course? So you can see that when your child bends over a bit like this, then you know that there is an auditory learning strategy, for example, and what you can do. So,
Wow.
of course, when you're homeschooling and there is a bit of agitation and and it comes up, definitely will come up. So don't blame yourself. It's normal. It wouldn't be normal if it wouldn't come up. But if your child doesn't do something that you already asked maybe for 3 times, and you wonder what went wrong, what was going on, you can probably bet that you have the auditory learning strategy and your child hasn't. And while you might be thinking, I told you already 3 times, why didn't you listen? And it's not because the child isn't willing to learn or to listen to you, but it's just that you need to know with which learning strategy you have. So that converts in the nonverbal language also. And yeah, there are so many examples. What else would you like to?
Well, okay, so let's talk about, excuse me, homeschooling and testing. Like testing their education, like what have they learned, what have they not? What kind of different examples like how could that look for the different sensitivities?
Yeah. Well, one of the many benefits and advantages of homeschooling is that you don't have to test. So they because the children who went to education and then were homeschooled can have a huge traumatic feeling with being tested. So I will speak for myself now. That was one of the many benefits of our child not being tested in that way. But when the child gets older, sometimes they want to be tested in a way just to measure where they are. And my emphasis at the time was more at who you become during your educational path. So who do you need to become to reach that goal? And that was more important than the end result, because when you emphasize on, hey, you are so persistent, that improves their enthusiasm to pick up and go on and implement all the things, and especially with resourcefulness, that is what, yeah, but I'm speaking for myself. And I can also give you examples of other parents, but for myself, I find that I'm not for the testing, because it's just that moment in time where they show just a couple of minutes what they are able of, but I don't think that's the case, because they need to feel safe. And it depends on how you have slept. What is your energy, for example, on so many things.
So could could testing, I mean, not really testing. I keep using that word, and that's not what I want us to call it. I'm really thinking about how to for a parent to learn where their student is, like what they wanted to learn, and what that looks like to them, and how they're going to reach that goal.
So it's more for the parent, you mean?
Well,
so they can keep on track.
Well, more so like if the child is doing languages, if they're doing language, sometimes for me, I've seen many different types of ways to assess where the child is. You can have a conversation with them. Just a simple conversation with them. It doesn't have to be, what do you know about this? Or what do you know about that? Or how do you look at this? Or what do you do? You could just have a conversation with your child. And from that, in that way, you could, learn where they are in that process.
Yeah, to be more creative than you would normally do. Yes, of course you can have all the educational methods and all the books. You can test where they are, but I think when you're homeschooling, that's not the emphasis of homeschooling. When you choose homeschooling, you'll probably do it with a different goal, a different mindset, and like you said, practicing with the language in a conversation, or email with another teen or another child from another country, and write in a different language. Those are the wonderful things that's the true freedom of homeschooling.
Well, and I agree, and I think I love the fact that the child learns so much about themselves through the ways that a parent can use, or a child can use, to direct their own education.
Yeah, because the child usually knows. Yeah. It's more often it's like I said, it's even harder for the parent, and I totally get that. I understand that. Coming from a different generation, where you had to do things in a certain way, and but when your child can really listen to what they really want, and of course you have to sometimes redirect the course within a humoristic way. But the homeschool journey is not for every parent. It isn't. It is not like a fairy tale where you can get them out of school and it will all work out. No, I must say it will be tough. And it also depends on the age of the child, how long they already were in the regular educational form they were before. And it takes a lot of patience, like you said before, and persistence to stay open, and you have to keep your own energy level up in able to be able to teach your child and to stay open to what they want.
Well, and to understand too that there are different ways to approach it. You can really, really customize it for yourself, your child, your family. You could have You could hire a tutor for certain things if, you know, microbiology is not your thing, or
Yeah. If it's not your thing, don't do it. Ask somebody else.
that's, that's exactly
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
please give yourself permission to fail. And that's a great example for your child. If you don't know it, just say, I don't know this, and we're going to get you some help. And in that way, you don't have that burden on your shoulder. But still, it takes some adjustments for your whole
Absolutely.
family. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And to be open to, you know, different ways of, of getting your child that education. There's so many free resources online, or as you mentioned before, there are, you know, there's a lot of social opportunities to, you know, be with other unschooling families.
Yeah.
Let's take it that way. So so, you know, your child can still get the socialization that they need.
Yeah.
You can also, you know,
Or volunteer work.
teamwork. You know, let's go to the museum. We have a farm in the middle of downtown Toronto that's been there forever, and my son goes there at least once a year.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
You know, he loves it. He loves it. He it's a working farm, and it's you know, and you can come through, and there's like, you can talk to the staff, and it's such an open area and an open, you know, experience that a child, you know, may not get in a regular school setting, because when they go on a trip, they're going with 30 other kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It really depends on what your child needs and what fits what fits their interests. And what I stand for, my biggest mission within education is that the highly sensitive children get just as much acknowledgement as the children, as the wonderful children with autism. And I know that for autism there are many funds, so that's wonderful. I'm glad that there are many funds, and that is a disorder in that way. I don't mean it in a bad way, but that falls in the category of a disorder. And highly sensitive children, of course, like I said, it's an innate trait. So it's not a disorder, and there are no funds for it. So many children are misdiagnosed, but I believe that they deserve just as much attention as the autistic children in education. Because when they are not seen, heard, and understood, just like a wonderful autistic child probably isn't seen or heard or understood in education, they can have the same or even worse results in their not only educational career but in the future. So I know it's a statement, and I'm not against autism in any way, the opposite, but we need more acknowledgement and recognition for high sensitivity in schools.
Well, and I think also, I think that's, you know, you're so right. And I think also for their mental health.
Absolutely.
You
There's
know,
so many teens that I
all
have.
these things like are so, like they affect mental health in so many ways. So you know, this was another reason that I wanted to have you on here, Susanne, was because I really, really wanted people to understand sensitivity issues in themselves, in their children, in their, like, it, I don't care where they take this conversation. I'm just so happy to have the conversation.
Yes, that's really important to have the conversation, just like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm telling you, when I went on your website, I was fascinated, and I was smiling the whole time I was on your website, because I was like, oh my God, she gets it.
Yeah.
She understands. I can't believe it. There's somebody out there who actually, looked at all of this stuff and now can has a program out there. Had I known about you, I would have come to you years ago about my son.
It gives me goosebumps,
It's so
saying
true.
that. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like for somebody to have that understanding and somebody who is willing to work with this population, and to get the word out there.
Yeah, and they are so talented, and it really pains me to see that they sometimes have to numb themselves in a way, and then not be able to show their talents and all the things that they're so brilliant at. And the society, and they see themselves sometimes as misfits when they finish school, and they are so brilliant. We need these, especially in the future. We need the children, the teens who think themselves that they are misfits, but you want the misfits in your team. You definitely want them. So that's why I help yes, talented, highly sensitive people realize how talented they are and their parents.
Yeah. And that they're not normal. Yes. Because that's a big thing is, you're so different, right? Yeah. And that's where a lot of the bullying comes in too. Mm-hmm. Is when, the other kids look at a child with sensitivity and just has no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, celebrate that you're different. You're just differently wired. There's just a bit more activation in a certain part of the brain than in the other parts. And that's why you're beautifully different, and celebrate that and use that. Focus on the good things and in education, and don't focus on the things that are not going well, but focus on the talent part.
And I'm going to tell you, Susanne, that I do the snack program at the school, and I also am a lunchtime supervisor. So at lunchtime,
I applaud you for that.
But at lunchtime is when I have these types of conversations with the kids, and with all of the kids, right from JK to grade 8. And a lot of these kids have been listening to my conversation for 4 or 5 years. And they know what I'm going to say before I even say it. Right? So, part of that conversation is it's okay to be different. It's okay. Who cares? Well, they why? How does that affect you? Right? Is the fact that they need that affecting you in any direct way whatsoever? And if it's not, what does it matter?
Yeah, but the world needs people who are different. Clearly.
Well, and wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same?
Yeah, definitely.
That's something. One of the things I keep saying to my son. He's like, "Oh, I'm so different," but that doesn't mean you're worse than anybody else. You're exactly the same, honey. You're just different. I'm different.
Yeah, the same in being different. Yeah.
Right? And if we were all the same, how boring would this world be?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have the artists and the musicians and the historians. And
what did we need most during Corona? The books, the music, and all. Those were the things that helped us thrive during Corona. Yeah.
Yes, and I think I'm so glad that I learned how to have a relationship with my son, because we have a very, very good relationship.
That's gold.
Yeah. So we can now, talk about issues. We can talk about, what's going to happen in the day. We can negotiate things, like he's learning how to negotiate what he wants. And that I'm not going to say yes all the time, but I'm also not going to say no all the time. Like if it's something that really matters, no, we can't change that. We really need to do this. But if it's something that doesn't really affect our day or who we are, then yeah, we can change that. That's fine. No worries, right?
Yeah.
So that has been very hard to teach him, but he's finally getting it. And it has really calmed our house down, where I can, he's like, he'll storm into his room and I'll leave him there. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't
if I'm overwhelmed, I don't want anybody to barge in my room either. So please don't.
And don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Right? Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone. He'll calm himself down. He knows what he needs. And he'll come out when he's ready. And he's right back into, okay, so what are we doing now?
Yeah.
You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to overwork or overthink those things. And it shows your child that, you're not freaking out about it. You're not talking about it all the time. You're not like picking every little thing apart. It's just a part of your life. You dealt with it. You're coming back to our conversation in a good space, and we're okay. Like, it doesn't matter. You handled it well. You did what you needed to do. And yeah. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, overthinking is really dominantly present within highly sensitive people. Overthinking and overanalyzing, and but that's also our talent, observing.
So it's not perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect by any means whatsoever.
Oh, I don't like perfect in that way. So please.
I don't like perfect in any way.
Yeah.
Nobody's
perfect. Is perfect. No, nothing is.
Which is great.
And that's best.
It is, because then you're not setting the bar here for yourself or your children. Because if you think everything has to be perfect, what do you think your child is going to think?
Yeah. But you're thinking from your own world of perception. So, and everybody does. So in that way, it can never be perfect because everybody's thinking from their own perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where the creativity comes in. I would like to, be open to the way other people look at things and feel things and do things. I have a sister who thinks I tend to, when I'm trying to solve something, I tend to overcomplicate things. Or I try to look at it from another perspective and I can't. Like, even if it's trying to, fix like a problem in the house. Like something as simple as that. I wanted to hang something. It had a lot of weight. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I went to my sister, who totally thinks she can break things down. She makes it simple. And, it takes her, about 5 minutes to be able to do that. So now, because I know that, I just automatically go to her.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I was thinking about doing. What do you think? What's your alternative? Because she has a simpler point of view and things like that than I do. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about your website. Do you want to give out the information about your website?
Yeah, it's www.internationalhsp.center, and center is CENTER.com. And the HSP stands for highly sensitive person, like I said in the beginning of the conversation.
So somebody could come to your site and they could what are they going to find there? Like general information and then how to contact you, or do you have classes on there that?
Yeah, everything is on there. The masterclass. You can also join Facebook. I have many groups and pages at Facebook for highly sensitive teachers and other educators. There's my Italian group over there. I have my international group, which is called Susanne. And I have a page all dedicated for our highly sensitive children in education, which is also called Susanne, with a globe with children hands on it. So you have to look for that. And the HSP Foundation page is also there. And much more, but let's keep it at this. And you can find me on LinkedIn.
So how is your book coming along?
Well, I have so much information. So much that my book coach said, Susanne, you're not giving people a degree. So I keep on writing every day, and I'm totally aware that I get to do this, and it belongs to my life's work.
Did you, in your research, how much did you learn that you didn't know?
For information, new information, not that much. It was really nice to hear because I wasn't looking for percentages and all the not at all, because usually we can guess the percentages. What I wanted to hear was the personal wording of people who experienced, for example, school anxiety, school trauma, and the advice that they had, what helped them, what didn't help, how they would have wished their parents would have supported them, what worked well, what their parents did that worked amazingly well, for example. And the really personal stuff, the deeper layers, that was what I was looking for, and not, the like I said, the percentages, but the polls and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you when you thought it was going to be finished.
Yeah, tricky question.
Okay, so let's do it this way. How about you let me know when it's done?
Better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And and then like I'll help you get that information out there. I'll help you forward for sure.
Thank you for your support. That's wonderful to hear.
I'm so grateful for you. I really am. And I think that you're a blessing. And I think that parents are going to be so grateful to have your perspective. I really do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also for being open to share how it truly feels, because many parents, and I also understand, but it takes courage to share about your child's journey. So also thank you for you in this conversation, for all the things that you openly shared, and for the opportunity to spread awareness about high sensitivity during your summit.
Thank you so much. I kind of feel like, I don't know, I feel like working with youth or in providing parents with information that they may need is my calling. I really do. I feel like that's my calling, is to help the youth in this day and age with all of this stuff that's going on, to really understand themselves first.
Yeah.
And accept themselves first.
That would be a true gift. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.